Now that we have our IDE installed, we're ready to start writing in Java. Well, not quite. There's a few more things we need to understand and kind of remind ourselves about before we can actually do so effectively. So in Netbeans, I want to take you on a brief tour of a few different features, as well as show you a couple things that are useful for us to know about before we start learning and reviewing how to write Java code. The first thing is on the left, inside of this test project. When I expand it, there's a bunch of different folders that I want to talk about briefly. Under our default package is where we had created our Java class, the starting point for what we're going to be adding in for our code. Packages are kind of like organizational folders that allow different access points to information. Right now, we're simply just using the default package to include all of our content. We can mess around with more complex strategies later in the course. Under test packages, we shouldn't see anything, neither under our dependencies for now. However, under Java dependencies, you'll find a large list of different libraries that each will have its own sub-list of a bunch of different content. There's a lot of code that's been pre-written that can be referenced and is needed for Java programs to run, and this is all referenced right here. We're actually able to import far more libraries or dependencies than are listed right here in our main Java program, and we've done so in the past if you studied coding previously, where we had different imports of different classes and methods that have been pre-written to use them in our projects. Here's a really short example. If I want to use a randomizer in my program, I can try to access this random class, and I can actually follow a shortcut. I'll show you more about this later when it's more relevant, but something appears at the top of my program called an import, and it says java.util.random. Java.util is a big library of features, pre-written code that have different functionality we want to use. And this class is called random. And in it, it has a whole bunch of tools or methods that allow us to generate and use random numbers. All of it's been pre-written. I can import it into my project to borrow from the solutions of others to solve some problems. So these dependencies are basically just another way of talking about borrowed code that helps our project actually run. And a lot of what we do is work alongside existing code and weave it together in unique ways to make our own projects work. So just a little bit about making sense of the things on the left here. Also, this pom.xml file talks a bit about how your project structure is laid out. Don't worry about that right now. We'll probably mess up more than it'll help if we talk about it. The next thing I want us to look at is this Run Project button at the top. When we press this, we compile and execute our program, meaning we're going to see the output of it just like a user would see if they ran our program themselves. When I press it right now, I actually am able to have my program have some information pop up here, but there's some failure to execute information. I'm actually going to create a new project so that we see exactly what it is that you would see in yours. I'm just going to call this tutorial. Have this pop up here really quick. And in my tutorial program, I'm going to create under here just a new class like you have. And now if I try to run this new class, this is the error that I see. And this should be the same one that you see. No main class is found. In Java, we have to specify where our program begins. And that's through a special class or a special method called the main method. It's a little bit of a finicky thing to remember, but luckily Netbeans is a nice shortcut for us. The method is called public static void main, but we can just write PSVM and hit the tab key to have it autocomplete for us. Public static void main. This is the starting point of all of our programs. Where I've clicked on this line right here will be the first line of code that is run in my program. Now, if I press play, no main class found yet because I need to actually make sure I save this class. So I'm going to press Control S to save it. I want to show you that just in case you get a bit confused. Now that I've saved it and I press play, I actually see this class, my new class listed, and I can select it as my main class. And now Netbeans is going to go through the process of doing some linking with a whole bunch of other resources. Whenever we create a new project and get it set up, we have to be a little bit patient. Build successful. It only took me 3.5 seconds. Might take your computer a little longer, maybe a little shorter. And now this is ready to actually run. Great. So we have it set up. We can actually compile and run a program, but so far it actually doesn't do anything. You can see there's just no content to the program itself. So let's do one more thing here to be able to wrap up this bit of a tutorial and get a printout message with a comment set up here. First of all, what's a comment? Well, it's a piece of code that isn't actually compiled. It doesn't actually affect the logic of our program. So just to make sure I remember what this does, these double slashes are going to allow me to create a single line comment. I could say, this is where my program begins, just to remind me what this main class does, and hit enter. Do remember that indentation isn't required. This would run the same as this does in Java, but it is really helpful for organization. You'll find that Netbeans auto indents things for you. Just let it auto indent and it'll mostly set up the syntax for you. It's quite a smart program in that way. What if I wanted to have a multi-line comment? Well, we see this happening at the top of our screen here. The slash and the star, and then any line after it can have a star beside it, and the star slash at the end as a multi-line comment. It also works like this. I could have, this is the start of a comment, and then if I hit enter, look, it auto-filled in the end for me automatically, which is great. I'm just going to tab over, and here is the middle, and maybe back here is the end. You'll notice if I press run on my program, none of this content shows up in the output because it's commented, so it's not actually a part of the formal logic of the program. So maybe I'll just say at the end here, I'm going to say this is the end of the program, and this is a little tag written by Mr. Rao 2021. Okay, this is a kind of a little signature at the end. And now in here I have the content of my program. I actually want to see one output in this section. So how do we actually report information out to the console or out to the screen to be viewed? Well, it's actually this long statement, system.out.print, or print line if you want to write it on a single line, with brackets. And anything that we write in here will be printed out to the screen. For now, I'm just going to type a simple message. And messages are always surrounded by quotation marks. I'm going to say, hello world, as is the tradition for coding. If you want another shortcut, SOUT, system out, and tab will automatically build all that for you. This is my first program of the course. Oops, typo. Wonderful. If I press run, I should now see, popping out at the bottom, hello world, this is the first program of the course. And there we go. In this little tutorial, we learned how to make sense of some of the information in our project. We learned how to set up our main function so that we could actually run our program. We learned how to set up some basic comments to organize our information a little bit, and how to output a bit of information to the console. In the next tutorial, we're going to review variables.